Tonight, we have a very special guest that's going to be on board. His name is Michael Volpe. He's a freelance investigator reporter, an author of 2 books, Prosecutors Gone Wild, and the definitive dossier of PTSD in whistleblowers. Well, tonight we're going to be discussing his upcoming book, Bullied to Death, the Chris Mackney story. It's a tragic story. You have to listen to this. It's about a loving father bullied by the family court system, his ex-wife, her father, to the point of his suicide. Now, this is an ongoing trend of what the CPS and family courts love to do to people. It happens more often than you think. It's never reported, but it does happen. All right, now, let's get into the scuttlebutt of the day here and bring our special guest, Mr. Michael Volpe, on. Mr. Volpe, can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, it's Volpe, but that's all right.
Volpe, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm very sorry.
No worries. No worries. Only my mom and dad would get pissed.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about tonight. A lot of very important information to get out. But first, I want to get to these 2 lawsuits in New Jersey, because this is the crux of what I talk about. I talk about this on my show a lot. I never really used the term gaslighting, but I'm going to start. But it's exactly what it is, and I think it's very important to discuss. So these parents out there, and there's a lot of them out here that do listen. Either they're listening live or they do listen in archive, that are going through the same thing, and it's very important to let them know they are not alone. They are far from being alone. These are bully tactics. They're bullies, and that's what I call them. I call them bullies. So let's start with gaslighting.
Gaslighting is actually a tactic for psychopaths, and there's a lot of literature on it. It's based on, first it was a play, but mostly it's known as. And this is in the story I want to mention. First of all, the story I wrote is a lot more than those 2 lawsuits. I think I covered 6 different lawsuits all around the country. There's 2 in New Jersey, and I mentioned the gaslighting. But gaslighting it's based mostly on the Oscar-winning film with Ingrid Bergman, where she plays the target of the gaslighting, and her husband at the time, played by Charles Boyer, tries to drive her insane. You got to see the movie to see why he's trying to drive her insane.
Well, I did the play in college, so I'm kind of familiar with that with the play.
Right. So there's one scene where he takes her keys and he goes, "Where are the keys?" And he has her look through everywhere, and he's got the keys. The one I played on Rebel Pundit, he takes down a picture and he's like, "Where's the picture?" And he brings in the staff one at a time to swear that they didn't take down the picture, and the whole time she's swearing she didn't take down the picture. And it's a technique to essentially to drive you insane. And this is in the movie, he says, I wish I could get inside your head to figure out where these thoughts come from. They drive you insane, and then they say you're insane. So the best example, I had 5 women from New Jersey that spoke to me. And the best example was one lady, her name was Karen Welch, where she was stalked for the better part more than 15 years. And, it started in Disneyland where a guy called her with one of those voice scramblers, so she didn't know who it was. And she's getting all of these calls, and she brings it into court. And the court says, "No, you're not being stalked. You're just crazy." So, no, you're not actually being stalked. You're just mentally ill, and you think you're being stalked, or you're saying this because of your mental illness. So on the one hand, you're being stalked, which drives you crazy. On the other hand, they don't believe you, and they say that you're not being stalked, you're just crazy. And that's basically the standard definition of gaslighting. And this happens it happened in Chris Mackney's case. It happens in family courts a lot. And one of the reasons it happens in family courts a lot is there's really no due process. There's no rule of law. There's no rule of evidence. So if you just throw out a whole bunch of accusations against someone in family court, it's easy to make them stick without due process, rules of evidence, and whatnot. And so it's a very common technique in all of family court. But getting back to the article I wrote for Rebel Pundit, those 2 RICO lawsuits in New Jersey, they claim a gender bias. But the article itself, I don't believe that the family court system on a macro level is biased against one gender or the other. On a micro level,
I don't either.
Right. There are certain judges, and I picked them out in the article. But the article itself goes through men and women who are being discriminated against and whatnot. And so there's one RICO lawsuit that's been filed by Karen Wolf that alleges, and I think she's in Bergen County. So in Bergen County, she's alleging that the family court system has a gender bias against women. And essentially what she's saying is, on a systemic level, what happens is that protective mothers who are either being abused or the kids are being abused, that they go to the court and they say, here's the abuse, and it's spun on them. And it used to be, before the person who created it died, that was known as parental alienation syndrome. And I see a lot of fathers' rights groups still using that term, and you want to get away from that term. That's a bogus junk science theory. Mm-hmm. And it's a complicated theory, but the problem is, the most explosive part is that a woman will try it, and it's not necessarily a woman, but it's always done against women. A woman will claim, and this is the theory, or this is the theory for the syndrome, that she'll claim that her kids are being abused as part of a scheme to alienate the father or her partner.
Right.
And so she puts false accusations of abuse into the kid's head in a plan, or maybe she can't control herself, so in order to alienate the father. And that's the syndrome. And of course what's happened is, every time a woman, not every time, but far, far too often, when a woman brings forward abuse allegations, they start to claim parental alienation syndrome. Now, they don't use parental alienation syndrome anymore, because the guy who started, Richard Gardner, killed himself, and he's basically been totally discredited. So what will happen is, it's sort of like the Shakespeare, a rose by any other name is still a rose. They'll just use all of the symptoms of the syndrome. They just won't use parental alienation syndrome. They'll just say, well, no, you're not really being abused. You're just saying that to alienate the father, which is what parental alienation syndrome is. They just won't use parental alienation syndrome. So that's what Karen Wolf is alleging. That's part of, in Monmouth County, which is another area in New Jersey, that's what several women, including Karen Welch, are alleging. And Rachel Allentoff is leading that particular lawsuit. And that may have already been filed. When I wrote the story, it hadn't been filed yet, but I believe they were within days of actually filing that suit. And, the more explosive part of both of those suits is they're going to name Christy in it, because they've all gone to him, they've explained what happened, and he's refused to step in. I don't know about the merits of suing governor for that, but that's how they're putting Chris Christy into that.
Didn't one of them actually sit down with Chris Christy himself? Didn't they have a one-on-one actual physical conversation?
Correct. Rachel Allentoff told me that she met him at some event. She explained what happened, and he assured her that he would look into it personally. And of course, that was about a year ago. And suffice to say, he didn't. If he looked into it personally, nothing really happened. Right. And I assume that's part of the suit. Look, that's absolutely for him a political thing. The legal part of it is a little different. But like I said, there's more than just the New Jersey suits. There's a suit from Connecticut of a woman named Susan Skip, and she's not suing RICO because she told me RICO is very difficult to prove. If you prove RICO, then what you've proven is whoever you're accusing, the entity or the person, is a criminal enterprise started against the mafia. And, of course, it's expanded. But she said that that's very difficult to do, and she didn't think she could do it. So what she did was she sued based on civil rights violation and violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And in her case, basically what happened is she has an adult deficit hyperactivity disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. And the post-traumatic stress disorder is actually legal abuse syndrome. It's a type of PTSD. Dr. Karen Huffer coined the term. And actually, Dr. Karen Huffer examined Skip, and she was one of several psychiatrists who diagnosed her with PTSD. In her suit, she said that the judge, her name is Linda Monroe, she's no longer a judge, and I believe in part because of Susan Skip's case, but the judge in her case wouldn't allow the diagnoses in, and instead said, in her opinion, in Judge Monroe's opinion, she had an unspecified and untreated mental illness, and if she wanted to see her own kids, she would need to see a psychiatrist of her choice, of Judge Monroe's choice, and then she'd allow her to see her kid.
So the judge came up with a diagnosis being the psychiatrist that she is, that you've got an undiagnosed, well, you've got something, I don't know what the hell it is, but you've got something, and I see how that works.
Right, and that's a more straightforward, because if she puts Judge Monroe on the stand and this comes out, I think that's very straightforward. That is absolutely, if she can prove that, a violation of her civil rights. The ADA is PTSD is a recognized disorder as part of the ADA, meaning if you have PTSD, the courts are supposed to, like, if a veteran gets sued in court and he has PTSD and he has difficulty with things, like if he can't read allegations against him because it'll flare up his PTSD, they have to make accommodations for him. So by not recognizing her PTSD, that's an ADA violation. Now here's the rub, if you will. The PTSD happened as a result of the legal abuse. So that's sort of the problem. Is the court doesn't want to recognize her PTSD because the court is the entity who gave her PTSD.
They created it. Yeah.
Right. So we don't. If the court takes that diagnosis and says you're right, you have PTSD, that opens them up to massive lawsuits. So that's probably one of the reasons why the court never recognized it. But look, she's got court transcripts. I mean, I quoted it right in the article where the judge says, no, you have an undiagnosed, unspecified mental illness, and that's the problem. And if you want to see your kids, you're going to pay my psychiatrist, and that's also a violation. I don't know if it's of the ADA, but certainly her civil rights. You have the right to see the psychiatrist you want, and certainly if you have a psychiatrist you trust, you shouldn't be forced to see a psychiatrist that the judge wants. Now, look, if she's sued for RICO, if she can prove that little scheme, that the whole point is to get you into the psychiatrist's office so this particular psychiatrist, or there might be a group of them, can get money from you, that's a racket. That's racketeering. Now you have RICO, but me saying it on the air and her proving it in court are two separate things. But I want to explain that what I'm describing, if the reason that the judge is doing this is strictly so that she can feed people like Susan Skip to psychiatrists that she likes, and possibly because she gets kickbacks. And I'm saying a lot of ifs. Right, but I'm saying a lot of ifs. But if you prove all of that, that is RICO, but proving it is very, very difficult. So the civil rights violations, I think, are a lot more straightforward. So that's her particular lawsuit. There's another lawsuit in Sacramento County, and basically in that particular lawsuit, what they're alleging is that starting in 1991, a group of judges started a group, and right now the name of the group, it slips my mind, but the name of the group is not important. So these judges...
The Court Accountability Coalition? The Family Court Accountability Coalition? Yeah, FCAC?
I think that's the group suing, but what the judges did. Right. Okay. So they're the group suing. What these judges did in conjunction with the Sacramento Bar, the Family Law Division of the Sacramento Bar Association, and they're going to be a named defendant. What they did was they started a group of lawyers that they would make what's called judge pro temp, that they would hear cases when the courts aren't hearing cases, so that they could clear up backlog. And as a quid pro quo, if you will, of hearing these cases, then when their own cases come up, they would get favorable rulings, deserved or not. And the most famous case out of that is a guy named Ulf Carlson. I did an interview with him. I had to do it over Skype because he's living out of Sweden. He and his ex-wife got divorced, and in the divorce, the judge gave, and the judge's name is McBride, he gave his ex-wife everything. All right, I don't know how much their assets was, but it's $1 million. She got $1 million, he got $0. Yeah. He ruled against him on every motion. And what he told me was the only reason that he was able to overturn it wasn't the rulings themselves. At one point, his lawyer is making a presentation, he's making a case, he's asking witness questions, and the judge just up and leaves. And just decides, you know what, this is no longer important. Just leaves the courtroom. And because that's such an egregious violation of his due process, that was what overturned it. And I didn't put this into the story, but this is also important. He said, yeah, no, it's great that it was overturned, but you know what? Now I have to spend another $40,000 re-litigating my divorce. So, yeah, his ruling was overturned, but that just means he's back in the divorce court. And he was featured on the...
That's it.
Right, absolutely. And he made a good point. He goes, if it's been proven that I've been victimized by a faulty court ruling. Why should I continue to have to pay? And that's a great point. And he has to pay because there's no law which protects him in a situation like that. And look, I'm not a big fan of laws, but that raises an interesting question.
Well,
and so can I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to say is he moved out to Sweden because he had two credible lawyers who told him that his life is in danger as a result of all of the controversy surrounding his case. He was one of the people interviewed on the movie Divorce Corp. If you guys want to know about family courts, that's probably the most well-known and most media-marketed either documentary or book that's ever been done on Divorce Court. It was released early last year. So he was one of the stories featured, and he has PTSD as well. And in fact, everyone I interviewed for that story told me they had PTSD as a result of their divorce.
Yeah, I mean that's common. I mean, look, when you've got your family being torn apart in the middle of the night, being taken away from you with no explanation, and they tell you it's just for 72 hours. Well, 72 hours come and go, and nobody gives you anything, and you're left, and then of course you have to go bankrupt. You have to sell your home, and you have to pay all the court costs. And these lawyers, they don't work for the client. They work for the CPS. They work for the family court system. They're all in cahoots. If you want to get to RICO, I mean, this RICO case, if you really want to get technical, because there are so many hearts of the matter, and every one of these hearts has several blood vessels connected to it. I mean, it is so big. You got the pharmaceutical industry at the top. You've got judges. You've got lawyers. You've got police. You've got school teachers. You've got social workers. I mean, it is so big and so vast. I mean, the RICO, you would have to put literally hundreds of thousands of people in one big jail. It's that big. That's, politicians are involved in it too. But this is why I cover this stuff. The more that it comes out, eventually, we're just trying to at least, get a handle on it so we can at least mitigate it and hopefully stop it at some point. But that's a long way down the road. But me and you talking about, again, I want to stress, me and you talking about RICO is one thing. Proving it, my first book, Prosecutors Gone Wild, the first book, the guy I wrote about, Chuck Pernici, he was tried under 5 RICO charges. I know more than I ever thought I'd ever know about RICO. It's very difficult to prove. They proved it in his case, and really, it was with bogus information. The book, I proved that he was innocent, but it's very difficult to prove RICO, and it should be difficult because if you prove RICO, that means you've proven a criminal enterprise. In his case, as the mayor of a town, so they basically proved that the mayor's office was a criminal enterprise because there's a bunch of bribery going on. So proving RICO is very, very difficult. So that's what I want people to consider, especially if you're listening to this and you're going, I'm hearing this and this is what's happening to me, maybe I should do RICO. I think Susan Skibb's case is a much more straightforward way to do it, and she's suing for $300 million. And by the way, violation of civil rights is a big deal. If she proves that her civil rights were violated, that's no small thing. But yeah, look, RICO, it's one of the things you always probably have to have is the racket. So in the Sacramento case, the racket is if you're a judge pro temp, then you get favorable rulings, and that's the racket. In the New Jersey cases, if you're the father, you get the favorable rulings, and that's the racket. And this again, if it's proven. So you have to identify the racket, and proving it's very difficult. But yeah, no, the reason I wanted to write that article, and I think the reason that the article was accepted is because I wanted to show that in more and more places, people are alleging with a fair amount of credible evidence that the family court system is a criminal enterprise. And if you have rackets going on, then that's a criminal enterprise. No, absolutely. I think it is myself personally, but just from all the people that I've talked to, so. Right. Look, I've talked to hundreds, and it's all the stories are variations of themselves. But you basically, when a family court
trial or when a family court case, and this when we get into Chris Mackney, this certainly was the case there, the decision has already been made, and then they just, the facts and all of these other things are just placed into place to get a predetermined outcome. So, that's the very definition of a racket. So, and this is what, certainly, like, I don't believe that every single family court case is corrupted, but I believe there's systemic corruption, and my definition of systemic corruption is at least 20%. So at least 20% of family court cases are corrupted, and that means you have a lot of criminal enterprises going on.
No, and it's all 50 states too. It's not just New Jersey, not just California.
Yeah, no, I've probably talked to people from and look, I covered cases in Connecticut, New Jersey, California. There's the most famous investigation of family court corruption was something known as custody for cash. It was done by Lou Jasikoff of the Scranton Wilkesboro Independent, and that was just mass bribery going on, with guardian ad litem basically being paid under the table to get the results that certain people wanted, and that's a racket. Now they weren't convicted under RICO. They may still be convicted under RICO. The people who have been convicted, and there are people right now in jail because of this, they were convicted for bribery and other sorts of crimes, but what he uncovered is absolutely a criminal enterprise. And so, that's in Pennsylvania, and I've probably talked to people from nearly every state by this point. So, I think it's, like I said, at least 20% of the cases are totally corrupted.
Yeah, I would say that's probably a very conservative number, but I mean, there's no real way to really know it. But I mean, if it's 1%, as far as I'm concerned, it's too much. That's just right.
It's a lot more than 1%.
Yeah,
right, it's a lot more than 1%. But my definition of systemic corruption is at least 20%. And that's why I use at least 20%. Look, I've talked to probably more than 1,000 people, and those 1,000 people, they probably know at least 10 people each. So just in my little network, I probably know 10,000 people who have been victimized, and that's just my network. And I talk to new people every day. They're all over, they're everywhere. And you're talking about hundreds of thousands, millions of people's lives just totally destroyed. How much time you spend on Obamacare, losing your health insurance, I don't want to minimize losing your health insurance. You're seeing your health insurance go up by a couple $100 a month, but that's really that's nothing compared to losing your kids, losing your house, losing your job, going to jail. So, I covered it, from October of 2013 to January of 2014. I didn't try to do any story but Obamacare because that's all anybody talked about, and that is losing your health insurance or having your health insurance go up by $100 a month, and you got all these poor families saying, "Oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills." Well, try having to spend $30,000-$40,000 on a divorce when you don't have the money. Try having a child support that you can't afford that's stuck on you because of a concept called imputed income, where a judge can say, doesn't matter what you actually make, I'm really, really smart. I'm the judge. I'm so intelligent. I know you can make a lot more, so I'm just going to go ahead and stick you with a child support that's based on an income that I think you should make. There's a really famous case of a Dr. Carlos Rivera who paid $13,000 a month in child support, who went to jail when he fell behind, and he fell behind because he was a partner in a medical practice, and he started off on his own. When you start off on your own, you don't make as much. So that's why he fell behind. But he was paying $13,000 a month, and the judge put him in jail when he fell behind.
I mean, there's people that don't even make $13,000 a year, and this guy's got to pay it a month. I mean, it doesn't take that much to raise a kid.
After tax. That's after tax.
Right.
That's after tax, and you're telling me that his ex-wife needed $13,000 a month for the kids? What the hell was she spending it on?
Well, that's to damage the father. That's all that is about. That's just to damage him and put him in jail. So,
and that's again, he switches. Once you're stuck with this kind of a child support, you can't switch careers. Because he fell behind because he went from being one successful partner in a group to starting out with his own firm. So, with his own practice, I mean. So that's why he fell behind. But the judge refused to lower his child support, even though it was $13,000 a month. So, and that happened to Chris Mackney. That happens everywhere. And so these family court cases, the destruction is so much. It's exponentially greater than having your health insurance bill be $100 or $200 a month more than you expected it to be, or losing health insurance that covered all of these things that you like, and now you've got to get a health insurance that doesn't cover all of these things. And again, I don't want to minimize that. That's a big deal, but 3 months we spent on that, nonstop. All right, look, I watched Megyn Kelly. That's all she talked about. That's all anybody talked about for 3 months. Oh my God, the website is down. All of these things are down, and you get people killing themselves every day because of family court corruption. You got protective mothers who not only lose their kids but have to give their kids to abusers.
Mm-hmm.
And how many of these stories are there? So we spend ad nauseum. This is in the book. Ebola. All right. How many people died because of Ebola in the U.S.? One? We spent like a month nonstop talking about it because one person died. My story, one person died. All right? There's not wall-to-wall coverage of what happened to Chris Mackney. His life, what is not? According to the media, his life is less important than that guy Thomas Eric Duncan. And why? Because Thomas Eric Duncan died in a way that can draw attention of viewers. And really, it's a lot more complicated than that. It's not viewers you could draw the viewers' attention with these family court stories. It's a lot more complicated. The media, for a number of reasons, doesn't cover it, but it's not because the stories aren't good or because people won't listen.
Well, there's a lot of reasons why they don't cover it. Your normal, your ABC, CBS, and NBC, well, they don't like to cover those stories because the pharmaceutical industry is connected to it, and that's what supports them. You watch the news, it's all, you've got 20 minutes of nothing but drug commercials and 10 minutes of, watered down, weak, pitiful, ridiculous news. That's not even news. But since you brought up Chris Mackney, now this story. Let's get into this story here. And I did read the entire suicide note that he got. And you know what? In the very first paragraph, explains everything that everything that's going on and everything that is wrong with the family court system in that one paragraph. But let's get into this story here now. What I want to know is, how did you find out about Chris Mackney, and what led you to write this book? And now the book, if I got it right, Bullied to Death, the Chris Mackney story. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I think it was September of 2013 for a website called WND.com. It used to be called World Net Daily. I mean, I guess it's still World Net Daily. But I did a story about Child Protective Services corruption, top to bottom, in the state of Pennsylvania, and that did really well. If you put my name and you can find it through Google. That story did really well, and I was looking for a follow-up. And one of the people I spoke with, I got to keep her name private because she wants nothing to do with the story anymore. But I asked her, I said, she helped me with that story. I was looking for a follow-up, and I asked her, well, what's the biggest problem in what you're seeing? She was an activist, and she said corrupt custody evaluators. And I'd never even heard of a custody evaluator, let alone a corrupt one. And she was able to connect me to about 100 women, and actually one of them was Karen Wolf, who's one of the RICO suit, one of the people leading the RICO suit. And it was almost exclusively protective mothers who were abused, who took the abuse forward, and then instead of having the abuse be investigated, it was flipped on them. And I actually talked to Chris Mackney. I started this in the middle of October. And the first time I talked to Chris Mackney was at the end of October. And the reason I talked to him was one of the women I talked to was a woman named Annette Junker. And she was her corrupt custody evaluator was a guy named Dr. Stanton Saminow. And that was Chris Mackney's corrupt custody evaluator. And Chris Mackney's story, there's three famous name dropping. And one of them is this guy Saminow. Saminow, if you're a big fan of The Sopranos, you may know that name. Because in the second to last episode, when Dr. Melfi figures out that Tony's a psychopath, she realizes she can't treat him because he's a psychopath. They actually use Saminow's research, and they quote him by name. Dr. Saminow said this, Dr. Saminow said that. So that's 2007, and he gained a lot of press and a lot of notoriety and a lot of respect that frankly doesn't deserve as a result of that mention on The Sopranos. And so she was victimized by Saminow, and so was Chris, and they were speaking to each other. So Chris reached out to me, and I started talking to him. And so, again, I'm talking to him at the end of October 2013. So I wasn't going to do his story because all I could do was Obamacare stories at that point. So I basically blew him off in November. And then in December of 2013, I started working on the story. And right towards the end of the month, I was making some progress because I'd actually found a second guy who had been victimized by Sam and Al. And so I was making some progress. And I was thinking, we call it a pitch. I was ready to pitch the story to, a number of different places. And we get to the end of December, and I still hadn't done it. And the reason I hadn't done it is I figured, well, we're between Christmas and New Year's. Nobody's really going to look at it. It's not that big a deal. I'll just get to it in January. And, looking back, I realized that my timeline and his timeline were completely different. And he needed relief right away. And I was like, if I get to it, I get to it. And so on December 29, 2013, he drove to East Potomac Park, put a shotgun underneath his chin, and blew his head off. Yeah. And he died.
I mean, the events leading up to that are, they're very common.
Shocking.
Right. And very, absolutely shocking. Another thing, the public, they still cannot put their arms around this. Even the more heinous the story is, the more people go, it can't be true. It can't be true, and they turn it off. But right. This story, of all the people that I've spoken to, the reporters, the actual victims themselves, and the perpetrators, this story is far too common. It's very complex, but. I put the backstory in the chat room for people to read. It'll help with understanding a little bit of this, but let's get into the events leading up to his suicide, because there's a lot of people out there that are going through the same thing, and I want them to realize maybe there's something that they can hear that they can do to actually save themselves, because suicide is. That's it. That's final. But and I'm trying to avoid a lot of that.
Do I have free leeway to tell this story? Because
you've got free leeway, absolutely, sir.
All right. So the story really starts in July of 1968 in a town named McAllen, Texas. And I know as a guy who looks at current events, McAllen, Texas, right?
Right.
Okay. McAllen, Texas today was the transit point for all of the unaccompanied minors. It's right on the Mexican border. But at the time and now, McAllen, Texas earned a reputation for lawlessness and corruption. So a man named Sam DeJalia Jr., who was a 30-year-old man who owned a business and 4 children under 10 years old, he was in a neighboring town named Edinburgh, Texas, doing some grain deals. And then he invited his wife and family down, and they stay in Edinburgh. And on Saturday, I think it's Saturday, July 11th, he gets a call from an unknown person who says, let's do a grain deal. And so he goes to meet this person. The guy drives him to the outskirts of McAllen, Texas. He pulls a gun on him and another man. He pulls a gun on him, and then they take him into a shack, and he gets shot and killed in the back of the head and left for dead like a wild animal. And the man who killed him was a man named Charles Harrelson. The guy driving the car was a man named Jerry Watkins. Charles Harrelson today, for better or for worse, is known as the father of Woodrow Tracy Harrelson, or Woody Harrelson, the actor. But I want to say, Woody did not know his father until later in life, and that they may or may not have had a relationship, but that's between him and his dad.
Yeah, I think he met him right before he died in the early '80s. I think he was still in prison.
Right. He said that he left him, and he left him right before the events that here occurred. And, so Woody and his dad were estranged. I think they may have had a relationship towards the end. But in any case, Charles Harrelson, he was a contract killer. He was a horrible human being. Right after this murder, he got on a plane and he started hitting on the stewardess. And the stewardess put an affidavit together explaining it was high school stuff, where he's like, give me a kiss. Oh, no, well, give me a drink. She comes back with a drink, tries to kiss her again. This kind of stuff. 2 hours after, he puts 2 bullets in the back of a man's head. So the reason Charles Harrelson had never met Sam DeJalia Jr., so he was a hired contract killer. The person who hired him was a man named Pete Scamardo. Pete Scamardo had been friends with Sam DeJalia Jr. since they were in second grade. They were altar boys together. They weren't best friends. I initially called them best friends. The family said they were friends. They weren't best friends, but they were friends. They were friends since they were in second grade. They both went to Texas A&M together, and they were business partners. So the reason he killed them was that they had taken out life insurance policies on each other. And Pete Scamardo he was running low on cash. He tried to do a couple of heroin deals with Harrelson that blew up, and so he thought that this was a way to fix his money troubles. Everybody gets caught. Everybody gets tried. However, Harrelson and Scamardo are represented by a guy named Percy Foreman, who's a legendary litigator. He lost 50 out of 1,500 murder cases, including he kept James Earl Ray, the killer of Martin Luther King, from getting the death penalty. A whole bunch of socialite killers and whatnot. He was a legend, and not only was he a legendary attorney, but he was a total scumbag. I mean, this guy had no ethics, no morals. He would bribe people to come in and pretend to be witnesses, or not to pretend to be witnesses, but to pretend like they could offer an alibi and things like that. So Scamardo got 7 years probation, even though it was proven that he paid Harrelson to kill Sam DeJalia Jr. Harrelson got 15 years, and he only served 5 years. So Pete Scamardo, he does no time except for maybe the 4 days when he was first arrested. He moves out to Virginia. Now at that point he had two young daughters, including a daughter named Dina. So they move out to Virginia, and he becomes a very successful commercial real estate investor and builder. So Dina, she's out in New York, and in 1999 she meets Chris Mackney. So they date, they get married, and the marriage is a rocky one. They start to get divorced in 2007. So here, why is the murder important? The murder is important because in 1999, when they were dating, Dina didn't tell him. From 2000 to 2007, while they were married, Dina didn't tell him about the murder.
How did Dina find out? I mean, the daughter, Dina, how did she really find out? I mean, it seems like the father isn't something that he would sit down on. Oh, okay, little daughter, yeah, I want to let you know I killed all these people. I mean, how did she find out?
Right. It's not clear how she found out. However, when Chris found out, I think it was June of 2008, and he found out that Harrelson had died, and they were doing retros on Harrelson's life, and one of them mentioned Pete Scamardo by name. So when he confronted her, I don't have the exact words in front of me, but she said, I already know this, it's none of your business. So he had to have told her at some point.
Right.
So she knew, it's his daughter. So she had to, she can claim she didn't know. She certainly knows now. And she was certainly taking her dad's money after she knew that he was a murderer. So at that point, at the point that Chris confronted her, and this is in an email that I have, at the point that he confronted her, her lawyers were a firm called Ain & Bank, which is generally regarded one of the top divorce lawyers in the state of Virginia. She fires the lawyers that day and hires a guy named Jim Cottrell. And here's all you need to know about Jim Cottrell. On his website, he boasts, I'm not the type to settle, so have your wallet out. So, process that and think about what kind of a person would want to hire a lawyer who says, I'm not the type to settle. So one of Chris Mackney's friends is a guy named Rich Ware, who used to be a lawyer, and he believes that in Jim Cottrell, Scamardo found a Percy Foreman, an aggressive lawyer. Percy Foreman had no problem putting the victim on trial. Percy Foreman claimed that Sam DeJalia's wife was sleeping with Sam DeJalia's cousin. He claimed that Sam DeJalia was having affairs on her. He claimed that the family were criminals. He threw out every accusation he could to make it seem like there's plenty of reasons why Sam DeJalia Jr. was killed. And this is the same type of an aggressive strategy by Cottrell. Cottrell put Chris Mackney on trial. And so basically, before Cottrell gets in, there's basically like a three-part strategy. The first part was they're talking about a divorce, but Chris hasn't moved out of the house. So what does Dina Mackney do? She files for a temporary restraining order. And devious women, what they do when they file for a temporary restraining order is they say, I'm afraid of whoever I need to get rid of.
Right.
That's exactly what Dina Mackney did. She said, I'm afraid of Chris Mackney. We had a fight, and then she would throw it, and he owns a gun. And I'm very uncomfortable with the kids in the house. Yeah, he owns a gun. And so here's the thing. Did Chris Mackney own a gun? Absolutely, he owned a gun. And I believe the Second Amendment allows it for him to own a gun. And here's the other thing you need to know. He owned the gun the entire time they were married, I think, or most of it, right? And not only did he never misuse it against her, he just never misused it. So he's a responsible gun owner, and yet she turns it around, makes it seem like the fact that he owns a gun should make him dangerous. So she gets a temporary restraining. So she gets a temporary restraining order. He was out of the house. So why does she do that? Well, if possession is 9/10 of the law and she has the house, she has the kids, who do you think is going to get the house and the kids in the final outcome? So she gets them out of the house. That's step one. So then they hire Cottrell. So what does Cottrell do? At this point, Chris Mackney has his own lawyer, a guy named Robert Surville. He gives him orders, find a way to settle. Now, again, keep in mind, the other side has hired a lawyer who says, I'm not the type to settle. So as Surville is giving him settlement offers, the other guy is coming back. We don't even need to talk about the settlement offer. First, we believe that Chris Mackney's hiding money. We believe that Chris Mackney's doing this. We believe that Chris Mackney's doing that. And they're just inundate him with work until Chris Mackney can no longer pay.
What's Chris Mackney's lawyer like? I mean, have you done any research on him? I mean, is he?
Yeah, he was a sharp lawyer, but here's the problem. Chris Mackney had maybe $100,000 at that point. It was out in 8 months. So Surville, the problem is, if one side is making settlement offers and the other side's whole purpose is to not settle, then it doesn't really matter how sharp he is. I will say one thing that Surville found was that he believed that he found that Dina Mackney was on the ghost payroll of her father. So he found some stuff. So I think the guy was a sharp guy. The problem is Chris Mackney didn't have an endless amount of money. So when he was represented by the guy, he had good representation. But once he ran out of representation, so step one is get him out of the house. Step two is bleed him dry of money. Step three is just take your boot, put it on his neck, and just crush him. So at that point, first step, whittle away at his parental rights. And then this is when Scamardo gets involved. So by 2009, now it's almost 2 years in the divorce. There's still no settlement. So they bring in Scamardo initially to do a psychological evaluation. Now, people who don't know anything about family court, psychological evaluation, and there's another term called custody evaluation. It sounds like the same thing. It's all Greek to me. Very important. Psychological evaluation is very narrow. You evaluate either both sides of the couple or maybe just one side. And you evaluate, do they have ADHD? Are they a psychopath? Are they this? Maybe bipolar, whatever they may have. A custody evaluation, and here's another key, in the psychological evaluation, you can't interview the kids and you can't say anything about custody. Custody evaluation is a lot more extensive. So he comes in for a psychological evaluation, and 3 months later it's changed to a custody evaluation, and Mackney's essentially bullied because by this point he doesn't have a lawyer. So the custody evaluation is a total hatchet job. And, the worst thing that I think that Scamardo said in the custody evaluation is he said, Chris Mackney has no friends. Now, that was really surprising to two, and Chris Mackney has a lot of friends, but it was really surprising to two of his friends, a guy named Mike Harris and a guy named Rich Ware. And the reason it was surprising to them is Scamardo interviewed them. So he interviewed two of his friends and still had the gall to say he has no friends. So how did he get away with that? He claimed that they'd known him for a long time. And Rich Ware and Mike Harris first met Chris Mackney at Southern Methodist University when they were all in the Fiji fraternity together. So these are friends since college. They haven't known each other for a long time. They've been friends for 20 years. And there was a third guy named Casey Long who declined to speak to me, who Scamardo claimed that he tried to reach out to and Long never called him back. But that's a third friend, also from Southern Methodist University, that would have been his friend from college, that would have vouched that he's his friend. So, if you claim a 40-year-old man has no friends, you can say pretty much whatever you want about the guy. Right. And it went from there. The other thing that Scamardo did is when Dina Mackney would make an accusation, like at one point she said, I believe Chris Mackney is a pathological liar. He would just quote her uncritically. When Chris Mackney would make an accusation against his ex-wife, he would say, he's doing this for this. He's doing this for this. He'd be very skeptical of the reasons that Chris Mackney's making an accusation and completely unskeptical of the reason Dina Mackney is making an accusation. Now think about it. You have a nasty divorce. You got accusations flying back and forth. Are we really to believe that when one person makes an accusation like he's a pathological liar, well, that must be true. But the other person, every single accusation is skeptical. I think most times it's a little more complicated than that. So he writes up a report that basically says Chris Mackney's a bad guy. Oh, and by the way, one other thing. So Chris Mackney brought up the murder and the fact that he wasn't told about it. He, number one, played it down. He called it the incident which he read about on the Internet. Now, it's true Chris Mackney read about it on the Internet, but it's not just an incident he read about on the Internet. He was convicted. Sam DeJalia Jr. is not alive today. That's not an incident, so he didn't specify what that incident was. And he said, I spoke to Pete Scamardo and his wife, Andrea, and they told me they have nothing to hide. Now, that reminds me of that Shawshank Redemption where, we're all innocent here. It's like, did you speak to the murderer? And the murderer said there's no big deal? Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, okay, well, no problem. And Chris Mackney wanted Sam now to talk to a woman named Cindy Wallace, who is Sam DeJalia Jr.'s sister, and he just didn't talk to her. So here he's saying it's no big deal, there's nothing to hide, and he hasn't talked to the victim's sister. So he did a hatchet job. That's used to, initially Chris Mackney had some visitation rights, but it's used to basically to cut him down, and then in March of 2010, even though there's no allegations of abuse, Dina Mackney asks for and receives full custody, meaning Chris Mackney can't see the kids at all. Now, the judge says this is very unusual, so even though he gives her custody, says, well, he has Chris Mackney do a psychological evaluation, which, by the way, is more money. So he does a psychological evaluation with a guy named Dr. William Zuckerman, who in this case I believe was not corrupt, but I have found that he's been corrupt in other cases. So wouldn't speak to me. I can say that I believe that he did an honest evaluation in this case, but I found other things about him. So Zuckerman basically says, well, he's got problems. Everybody has problems, but there's no reason why he shouldn't see the kids. So it's October of 2010. He's about to see the kids, and he's got a new apartment. He's asked to fax in a receipt and a lease. And he doesn't write it down, so he only faxes in the lease. They go to court, say he's in contempt of court, and the guy takes away his parental rights because he didn't fax in the lease. And he's never seen his kids. So he hasn't seen his kids since March. Since October of 2010, they basically said, you were in contempt of court, you can't see the kids. And then at that point also, so he's a commercial real estate broker. The market tanked in 2008. He's making less and less and less. Dina Mackney asks for and receives throughout the process $228.16 a month in child support, as she is paying over $1 million for her lawyers. So the same woman who can afford $1 million for her lawyers in 6 years is saying she also needs $28.16 a month in child support. And I did the math. It would take him 20 years to pay the $1 million she paid in legal fees.
Well, that's the father paying that. That's the father.
Right, but she correct. And I found he gave me and that's correct. The father he paid at least some of it. I believe he paid most of it, if not all of it. And the father is certainly the one who can afford it. And another thing that Chris Mackney brought up that the court never accepted was when they first moved into their house, neither one of them could afford the house. The father was augmenting their income, and even Cervell, when he left the case, he said, you're asking for all this child support. We all know who's actually supporting Dina Mackney. And so, it's ridiculous that you're saying that Chris Mackney needs to pay this money when we all know that her dad is supporting her. In the first invoice that I found, there's $75,000 in payments to Cottrell. At least $45,000 went from Pete Scamardo because they're actually coming from his company. But I also don't know if he didn't drop $30,000 in her account before she paid the other $30,000. Right. But at least 45 of the 75 of the first 75 he paid. And you're correct. My belief is that he paid most, if not all, of that legal bill.
Well,
but again, she has a jewelry company. And she advertises it like Oprah wears her jewelry. There's a lot of famous people that wear her jewelry. It's not clear how much money she makes. She was really taking off as the divorce started, but I would say like 6 figures, but not enough money to pay $1 million in fees. I would say between $100,000 and $200,000 she probably clears, but not enough to pay for these kinds of lawyers on her own. Certainly not on her own. She didn't.
He was making more. Right, she was making more than Chris Mackney, though, right?
Correct, but that's not how child support. That's only one part of the formula. If she has full and complete control of the kids, that part, the less you see the kids, the more your child support is. So that's another side of the equation. So yeah, she was probably making. Certainly, she was making more than him in 2010. certainly she was making more than him in 2011 because I think he made zero in 2011.
Right.
So I know she was making more than him in 2011. So starting in 2010, he doesn't see the kids, and then he starts going to jail. And that's, I ask people that are victims of family court, and I try to figure out why don't they go through with it, because almost all of them tell me that they want to commit suicide at one point. So I ask them, why don't you go through with it? And one of the main differences between the people who don't go through with it and Chris Mackney's story is the constant going to jail. So there were a lot of different times that he went to jail. I want to highlight two. Once he went to jail for 10 days because on Charles Harrelson's Wikipedia page, if you guys want to look at it, there's a mention of Pete Scamardo. That was initially Chris Mackney. I think they've changed it around a few times. He went to jail, and this started with Sacramento because the court decided that it wasn't in the best interest of the children, because that's what we use in family court, the best interest of the child, wasn't in the best interest of the children that they know that their grandfather's a murderer. So he was basically given a gag order. So he violated a gag order by putting that stuff on Wikipedia, spent 10 days in jail. So, that's just a clear violation of his free speech rights. The other time, and there's four, the second time that he went to jail, he was in jail a third time, and his lawyer, they finally gave him a lawyer in 2012 because they realized he was a pauper. So they gave him a lawyer, and it was a guy named Rob Worcester. He sent him a letter, and he said, look, if you promise to leave the state, to not ever contact Gina Mackney or her kids ever again, they'll let this go. So he moves out to Texas. He gets a job. He said, I started going to the gym in his suicide note. And then she contacts child support enforcement, and which is interesting because I actually found that if child support is cross state lines, there's all sorts of new grants. And she'd never contacted child support enforcement before. Now suddenly she contacts child support enforcement, so he's got to deal with child support enforcement in Virginia. Keep in mind, she said, we're going to leave you alone. So he sends her an email, and he says, either you voluntarily reduce the child support or I'm going to have to go to the media and talk about the abuse. She takes that email to the prosecutor's office in her county, that's Fairfax County, and the prosecutor's Elizabeth Tolhart. I want that name on the record. Elizabeth Tolhart. She charges Chris Mackney with extortion. She has the Texas authorities arrest him with SWAT team at 8 in the morning in his apartment and fly him to Virginia in Con Air. And then he spends 4 months in jail. And then he gets the court-ordered attorneys who say, well, wait a minute, child support is for the children, so he can't be extorting money from you since that's going to the children unless now he's found not guilty, but he did spend 4 months in jail. So that's
it took 4 months to figure this out.
Right, well, he spent 4 months between the time that he was arrested and the time that he went to jail. So then at that point he starts a blog called Good Men Did Nothing, and he started talking again about his the murder, and he was facing yet another court date in January 24th, and he just had it, and he killed himself.
Now, in that 4 months, they probably used that against him as well because he wasn't paying child support. Now, what was his,
correct? No, and I didn't mention one thing. The same people who told him to leave the state, the divorce lawyers, Cottrell, told him you better come back in the state and deal with the child support. So, he was a yo-yo. So the same people who said you better move out of state in 2012 told him you better move back in state in 2013. Yeah, no, absolutely. And they were going to use the child support. The good men did nothing, and they were going to put him back in jail. And he just had it.
This was a deliberate attempt to just simply destroy this man to absolutely nothing.
Murder by suicide. Yeah, murder by suicide.
Has the wife, Dina, has she made any comments since his death? Public comments? Or
no.
Anything?
She has not made any comments. However, there is a Washington Post, or there's another part of the story after the suicide. It's a Washington Post article written by a guy named Eugene Volok, who's a First Amendment attorney and professor. He's one of the most brilliant minds on the First Amendment. And the reason he wrote it is she then tried to copyright the suicide note. There are two pseudonyms. One is Balins, B-A-L-I-N-S, and the other one is Levitafam. I think it's L-I-V-A-D-I-I-F-A-M. And both of them, I believe, are either Dina herself or someone very close to Dina. So she's never made a public statement.
She wanted to copyright his suicide letter, so obviously she could make money off it. I mean, what the hell would she need to copyright a suicide note for?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So when he killed himself, in the car was his laptop, and he put a note and said, "I want this laptop to go to my brother." So the police find the laptop. They contact his brother. Tina Mackney comes down as soon as she finds out about the suicide and tries to get the laptop. And they said, "No, this is going to his brother. You're his ex-wife. You have absolutely no right to it." She comes down again. She eventually involves the authorities. She eventually goes to court, and he didn't write a will. So she becomes executor of his estate because his kids, she's like she's the parent to the kids.
Right.
And so she becomes executor of his estate, and she basically bullies his family and the police into getting the laptop. Now, why does she want the laptop? Because many more documents than I have, because I've recovered a lot, but not all. But all of the documents he had relating to the divorce are on the laptop. So now she's got custody of the laptop. But he's put those documents online as PDFs. He created online links using the PDF files. So now the suicide note. So then the second thing she did is she bullied his family into taking down Good Men Did Nothing. But I had saved the suicide note in the entire blog. A lot of other people saved it. So the suicide note pops back up in February. And so then she tries to she copyrights the suicide note. Why? Because she wants to take it down. She wants to take down not just the suicide note, everything he ever wrote on the internet. She wanted to completely eliminate his cyber existence. There's an article by a website called Tech Dirt on this, where he explains it. I want to say I was the anonymous at the time. I was the anonymous source for. It was the second article written in May of 2014, where he explained it. Where I gave him all the documents, where I showed him that what she's trying to do is remove any hint that he ever lived in cyberspace. So why did she want to do that? She wanted to get rid of all of the documents and the suicide note, so no one could see what was done. So Eugene Volpe wrote about what she did with the suicide notes and whether or not it was legal. And basically what happened was in April, a men's rights group called The Voice for Men, they received one of her letters saying, "You better take down the suicide note." And they gave her the middle finger. Instead of taking down the suicide note, they put up the note from her lawyer and the suicide note, and the note went viral. And like 300 websites have it. And I want to say, you know what's interesting is, you know how they say if you stand up to a bully, they back down.
Right.
Well, these two people, her and her dad, are bullies, and A Voice for Men stood up to them. And you asked me, have they commented publicly? No. Their lawyers never commented publicly. Their divorce lawyers never commented publicly. No one near them has ever commented. I got one of her friends on the line, and she talked to me for 2 minutes before hanging up on me because I asked her. She was referenced in one of the court proceedings, and I asked her about that, and she comes out with, "Well, Chris Mackney's crazy and a scary guy." And this is again the gaslighting. Chris Mackney's crazy, and so I said, "You said he was crazy. Can you expand on that?" And she said, "No," and she hung up. So basically, all of her friends, all of the people near her, they've never had a comment, and I believe that's basically that bullying behavior, where you stand up to the bully, they got nothing.
Right. Well, they've got a lot of money. They've got a lot of pull. They've got a lot of power. So you can stand up to them all you want to. They're still going to be able, with their resources, they're still going to be able to, knock you down. So, but
right.
Anyway, we do have a caller that's been holding patiently here now for a little over an hour. Can we go ahead and we can take a call here real quick?
Have you got it?
Let's see. All right. I only have your phone number. So if your number is 2263, you are now on the air with the captain. Do you have a question for Mr. Volpe?
I do. The captain, this is Ted Topier and Mike. I love listening to your story.
Oh, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. When you hear somebody tell the story, it's such a different perspective of reading everything and all the details. And when you hear somebody that's impassioned, like Mike really, dug into the story and found the details, right. It's scary how alike the details are to my story. Only, there are some significant differences. What I really want to ask Mike is, Mike, when you were digging all this, did you ever get calls from people to tell you to stop this, or did you ever get threatened in any way? Was the machine ever against you, or were you just the guy that was doing the research and you were kind of like in the weeds, not really hearing anything about people fighting back against you for wanting to do this story?
Right. That's actually one of the reasons that I was anonymous for a while, was so I could dig without having people come back at me. And the other reason is because if people don't know you're around, they're a lot more likely to say things. I should mention I was the one who shared the suicide note with a guy named Henry Maycow, who's a conspiracy theorist out of Canada. And he got, like, the reason I think that Balin's and Levita Fam are near Dina Mackney is because he got an email that's very similar. But I wasn't, because I kept myself very low-key. And then April 23rd comes along, and 300 websites are talking about it. And, it was hard for them to figure out who's doing what. Like, it's hard to bully, like, 300 different people. So I was never bullied. The other thing is I'm not in Virginia. And the other thing is I don't respond to bullying. So, if they got me on the horn and tried to shut me down, that would just go right into the book. So, he's got a lot of pull out in Virginia. He doesn't have a lot of pull in Illinois. The thing I'm cognizant of is a defamation or libel suit. I expect one when this book comes out, because that's what he does. But no, no one near him ever threatened me, but I think by the time they realized what I was doing, the thing had unfolded so much, they weren't really in a position to threaten me because there were too many people around.
Right.
You think they're just being silent just to in the hope that it's just going to go away, and they're trying to discredit it by being silent?
I think they're bullies, and I think A Voice for Men stood up to them. And once you stand up to a bully, they got nothing. I think that they're exactly like the bully in the playground, and some kid just popped them in the nose, and they run away with their tail between their legs. I've sent Dina over 30 emails. I sent her one this morning. I sent one to the D.C. Police Department. They keep giving me no comments. I mean, these people gave a laptop to the person he blamed for the suicide in clear violation of his written instructions, which were found with the laptop. And and I said, look, if this isn't true, you need to correct the record. But if it's true, you have a duty to explain it. And they've got no comments. So I think that these people are typical bullies, and somebody stood up to them and they got nothing.
Is she?
And listen, if I'm wrong, I'm sure she's going to get this. Pete Scamardo, if you get this, I'd love to hear from them. I'd love the explanation.
Is she remarried now, or is she in another relationship now?
Yes, she's in a relationship with a guy named Brian Mitchell. That's with a Y. This guy used to be the CEO of a company called MCG Capital. I said used to be because on a Securities and Exchange Commission form, he claimed that he graduated from Syracuse University, and he didn't. So they removed him, and he was removed from chairman. He was still CEO, and then he took out a loan without paying it back, and they got rid of him. I'm speaking with his ex-wife, and she says it's a match made in hell. It's basically as big a psychopath, and he gaslights her.
Which sounds like she just hooked up with someone just like her father.
Right. Well, and his ex-wife believes that the guy wanted to ingratiate himself into this family for the money. I don't know what his motivations are. Oh, and by the way, I've contacted him. No comment either. Oh. So all of these guys, I've contacted 100 people who have a lot of explaining to do, whether it's the Virginia Psychology Board, politicians, judges, you name it. There was an accusation made by Chris Mackney that the father was using the daughter as a front to get a horse racing license, because you can't get a horse racing license
if you're convicted
with a felony on your record. And I contacted them. And I was like, is this true? If someone's using a person as a front to get a horse racing license and you gave them a license, you have a duty to explain that.
Right.
Yeah. And no comment from them either. So, there are over 100 people. I firmly believe that this is just typical bully behavior, that they didn't, somebody stood up to them and they got nothing.
And Mike, just quickly, how old are the children? And is there any perspective about where they're at with all this? I mean, did they miss their dad? Did they see their dad? Do they?
No.
Are they crushed by all this, or what's going on?
No, they've been alienated. The ex-wife, she shares custody with her ex-husband Brian Mitchell. She saw her kids about a week and a half after the suicide, and she knew Chris really well. And her kids told her that his kids told them, doesn't matter that daddy's dead because he's crazy anyway. There's that word crazy again. And do you think 10-year-olds have that on their, get that on their own? By the way, Rich Ware, this is a good point. Rich Ware took away father's 6 kids fathers from 6 kids under 10 years old. This guy, between Chris Mackney and Sam the Jailer Jr., 6 kids don't have fathers who were under 10 years old. But no, they're I don't know if I should say this. I believe they're both budding psychopaths. I think they're basically being groomed by 3 people at least. They're all psychopaths. And no, I really don't have nearly as much sympathy for the kids as the kids in their class, the kids that they're around, because you got a budding psychopath. They'll create all kinds of trauma in you when you don't realize what they're all about. But no,
it's sad. These kids are going to grow up to be psychopaths themselves. I mean, that's all they know. That's all they've been,
Right, and keep in mind this is court ordered. This is what the court wanted. In the best interest of the children, we want to put you with Gina Mackney, her father. Like, I don't know as much about his wife, about Pete Scamardo, that's the grandfather. I don't know that much about his wife. So I don't, I want to put the label on her because I haven't been able to dig enough on her, except for the fact that she knows he's a murderer. She stayed with him the entire time. So I think you can read into it what you want. And look, these are people that they contributed to the charities, and they, and then they're put in the newspaper as Look
how great, wonderful I am. I'm giving to charity. Yeah.
Right. Look, that's if you ever read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, that's basically the Jekyll and Hyde. The Jekyll part is that you contribute to the charities, and the Hyde part is the murder and the crushing people to death and whatnot. But they contribute to charities. They're well-to-do people. They're very important people in their little sphere. Dina, there's a magazine called Washington Life. She's in it all the time. She's like a socialite. She's at this party, she's at that party. And I don't know how much the people who know her know, but you're having drinks with a woman who drove her ex-husband to death. So
Mike, you talked a little bit about how Mike or Chris Mackney was in jail 3 or 4 times, or 4 times, right? The distance or time between each time in jail, what was that time frame like, and what was he trying to do? Can you explain that a little bit? I think there's another piece of the story there, just because I think it's the repetitive of getting knocked down, and it's that image, right, of putting your foot on somebody's throat, that you keep squeezing the life out of them, and that whole piece really comes into play because the court is really driving that, along with the corruption in the family court, and they're just really looking to leverage the criminal court in the family court case and the family court stuff in the criminal court, and just combine the two to ruin somebody, which is exactly what's being done to me.
Right, and there's a lot of similarities between your case and Chris Mackney's, but what I call criminalizing divorce, and I call it 911, but criminalizing a divorce where you were both charged criminally on very dubious charges. And again, yours was they're both emails, and they're both these like explosive, in his case it's extortion. No, you're right. He sends his wife an email and says either you reduce my child support or I'm going to go to the media. That's extortion. And by the way, extortion is 2 illegal acts. You use one illegal act to do another illegal act. So really, it wasn't even extortion by the definition of extortion. But so that's similar. But one time he didn't do a parenting plan. He spent 6 months in jail. The 10 days, that's 4 months. I don't remember all of the details, but basically starting in 2010, 2011, he effectively spent more time in jail than he didn't. 2013, he spent 4 months in jail. And absolutely, it was one thing after another. There was one time where he was behind on bills, and the only reason he got out of jail was because his mother died, and the inheritance was able to get him to catch up. So he didn't see his mother's funeral. And his mother's death was what got him out of jail. But that's the final step. The difference between thinking about suicide and actually committing suicide is that nonstop repetitive going to jail.
Right. And how did his family? I don't know how close you were to Chris Mackney's family, but how were they with all of this? Like, his mom obviously must have been stressed about it. His family, his brothers, sisters, his deepest friends. Right. I mean, I hear it all the time. People can't take what I'm doing. How did his family and friends relate to what was going on in his life?
Right, that's a great question. First of all, his dad died in 1999. His dad didn't live to see all of this. I don't know how his mom processed all of this because she died long before I got in the picture. His brothers were out west, and they didn't have a bad relationship. They just weren't close. So, and the family didn't give me anything on the record. That we did speak off the record, and I don't want to say anymore. They weren't that close. I'm not sure exactly how much they knew, but I think they knew. And yeah, they didn't. I don't know how they processed it. I can tell you, I had an off the record conversation with one of his friends, who said, we were really good friends. They knew each other in New York, and they were really good friends. And from 2007 to 2009, all he could talk about was this. And I had other stuff in my life. And so by 2009, I just cut him off. And he stopped. He paused for a second, and he said, "I got to live with that for the rest of my life." So one friend he definitely alienated. Rich Ware, he knows more about the story than I do. Mike Harris, he may know more about the story than I do. Mike Harris told me, look, I spent as much time as I could with Chris, but I had 4 kids and I've got a business that I run. So, I spent as much time as I could. He definitely still had a lot of friends. A lot of his friends that didn't live in the area, I don't know how much he shared with them. So, I spoke to a guy named Mark Duda, and he said, he told me about it, but I really didn't understand just the severity of it. So, the 2 people he really leaned on was a guy named Rich Ware and a guy named Mike Harris, and they were really good friends till the end, and even past the end. They're the 2 guys that agreed to go on the record to have their names used, even though they know all about Pete Scamardo. So those guys, there was definitely at least one person who was alienated. But that's the irony of Samonow's statement about how he has no friends. I got to say, he had really good friends who mostly really were able to try to process it, and they didn't get alienated. One guy who's was very regretful of it at this point. So for the most part, I don't think it was the alienating process of his friends. And also, he met a lot of friends in the same position as a result of it.
Yes.
So he made new friends as well.
Interesting.
Well, all right.
Story.
Well, this suicide note. Now, you sent me the whole thing, and I know I've seen bits and pieces of it that's been flashed around all over Facebook. But if you read it from the very beginning, again, I mean the very first paragraph of this explains everything. The pain from the emotional abuse, psychological abuse, parental alienation, and legal abuse has been unbearable. The first sentence right there. I mean, that is very true. My children and I were abused, and when I spoke out, no one did anything. No one, not the attorneys, the doctors, the judges. Well, that's true. The more you speak out, the more you get in trouble. And if you, God forbid, if you exercise your First Amendment right and go on Facebook or call somebody on the phone, which they're tapping your phone. If you talk to your neighbor, that's probably why he didn't talk to a lot of people. He was probably threatened that if he talks to too many people, it's all going to come back on him. That's probably why he kept quiet, and that's why a lot of victims keep quiet.
That's actually, to some degree, that's true. He would send out mass emails, and he sent me a couple of these to politicians and other important folks like the Virginia Psychology Board and the Virginia Bar Association and whatnot. And when they would receive these emails, that's when the retaliation would become a lot more heavy-handed.
How long did he have his blog up? How long did he have his blog
He had the blog from, I think, October 23rd he started, and he put the suicide note on December 24th, which is significant. No one noticed it for 5 days. He actually put 3 more posts on the suicide on the blog. But
so he only had the blog up for just a few months. It was towards the end of his life, right?
Right. Though I got to tell you, like friends who I spoke with said, I didn't realize what he went through until I read his blog, and it's so laid out. And this is an important part of Dina doing the copyright notice. What he did was not just in the suicide note. Like if you find the suicide note online and there are hyperlinks, and you go to the hyperlink, most likely it's going to go to a dead link because it's been taken down. So the entire blog was full of these hyperlinks, and because she got rid of the documents online that the hyperlinks went to, the hyperlinks went away, and that was a deliberate strategy to hide evidence. That's really important.
Right.
She claimed the suicide note is an invasion of her privacy. Some document that no one can recognize on a script page that no one goes to is not an invasion of your privacy. And that's what she wanted removed as well.
How did she bully the brother to get that laptop? Did that have to go to court? Did she use attorneys?
Right. The story I got, I'm still checking it out, but she basically went down to the police station a couple of times, and they told her no. And she may or may not have gone to the District of Columbia Attorney General's office. They haven't commented to me yet. And the District of Columbia Attorney General's office may have pressured the police.
Because if they're divorced, they have nothing to do with each other. She should not have that.
That's probate law.
This is a huge. Number one, it's a violation of my free press rights. All right, now she's got his laptop. She goes into his Yahoo account and she can see our communications. All right, I have a total right not to have the target of my investigation know what I'm saying to one of my sources. Now, Gina Mackney's current boyfriend, Brian Mitchell, his ex-wife, Jill Peterson Mitchell, she communicated with Chris Mackney. She said, well, what about the communications I had with him? Now he has them? How is that right?
Right.
This is a massive violation. And look, the person that I spoke to at the D.C. Police Department, their press person, Gwendolyn Crump, she has a lot to answer for. She doesn't want to answer how all of this happened. This is what Cheryl Atkinson wrote about in Stonewall. How when you confront these press people, they believe that they work for the government as opposed to the people, and they don't want to explain things to you. The police department gave a laptop that he clearly wanted his brother to get to his ex-wife, the woman he blamed for his suicide. There's absolutely no way to explain that.
Right.
It's a violation of everything. And again, it's a violation of my privacy. It's a violation of the privacy of everyone who ever communicated with him by email. And again, the main thing she wanted was all of the documents that he had saved.
Right.
So she wanted all of those files, and she got them. It was a multi-step process. You get the files on the computer, then you go for the copyright notice. And again, I'm saying I can't prove this, but I can assure you she wasn't coming up with this legal strategy. This was Pete Scamardo, her dad, coming up with the legal strategy and paying for it. And the lawyer they used is a woman named Rochelle Hill at Bean, Kinney & Gorman. If you're in Virginia, you can find her. I think it's rhill at beankinney.com. You send her an email and ask, what's going on? Why are you doing this? How do you?
Sounds like a lot of people got a lot of explaining to do. I mean, there's got to be a judge involved. Obviously. The judge is a guy named Robert Alamond. And what's interesting, there's a couple of interesting things. This judge is in Arlington County, not in the county she lives in. So she may have gone judge shopping, and he's got his own issue with family court. He made some very questionable rulings. If you do Robert Alamond, well, see, that's what I wanted to get into. They were living in different. Were they living in different states when he died? Where was he living when he died?
He was living in the basement of a church. One of his friends, I don't want to give the name because the guy wouldn't speak to me. One of his friends had bought a church that had been closed down. He was going to renovate it, turn it into condos, and they had a basement.
No, but I mean, when I'm talking state.
What state?
I think it was Fairfax County. I think it was still Fairfax
Virginia.
County, but. Right. So the laptop is found in D.C. She lives in Virginia. She lives in Fairfax County, Virginia. He lives in Fairfax County, Virginia. For whatever reason, the judge they went to is in a completely different county. That judge has a lot of explaining to do. But that judge,
where's the brother live? Where's the brother live?
The brother lives in California. This is a state judge giving a copyright notice. Copyright is a federal issue, and a judge can't give a copyright notice. You actually go down to the Library of Congress and get the copyright notice. And really, and Eugene Volpe explained this. You can read his blog. Once he posted it on the internet, he was giving implied copyright to himself by posting it on the internet. She can't give a copyright notice. And look. The second article on TechDirt, there's a couple of really good comments where they said that none of this would stand up in court. All they were really doing is sending out these nasty notes and just assume that everybody would back down. Why? Because they're bullies. And a Voice for Men, this men's rights group, they didn't back down, and the whole thing blew up so fantastically. People want to change the Strysand. This is the Strysand effect. There are people out there who say it should just be called the Mackney effect, based on how fantastically it blew up. We're talking like 20 million people all around the world read the suicide notes. It went everywhere. Like
I've never heard of anybody wanting to copyright a suicide note.
No.
I mean, that's insanity.
Have you ever known someone whose the parents of their two children just killed themselves, and their first thought is, I better get the laptop that was with them? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever known someone who is friends with someone since they were in the second grade, but decides he should be dead because you need to collect the insurance money?
No.
So it's all part
heroin
of it's all part. Right? Yeah, because of a bad heroin deal. Yeah. So it's all part of the same behavior. When I call them psychopaths, I'm not just throwing out words. These are evil people. All right, evil people kill their friends because they want to collect the insurance money. Evil people drive their exes to suicide because they don't want them in their lives, or they're worried that they're going to explain how my father once had a man killed, which of course is true. That's what evil people do.
Well, has there? I know there's not been any allegations, but are there any other murders or crimes that could be, I guess, linked to Scamardo again?
Scamardo?
Yeah.
Well, all right. So he's got over 100 lawsuits in Fairfax County. There's the fact that he got a gaming license, even though he's a felon, and also NJ Mackney may have been. I'm not sure because I actually need to do. I believe I can't do a Freedom of Information Act request to the gaming commission. And then there's the fact that Dina Mackney goes payroll on his company. And then there's one more. I don't believe you can own a real estate company as a felon. So how did he build all of this real estate as a felon? Yeah, maybe that's got to be.
Is the business under the wife's name? The business is probably under the wife's name.
Well, if it is, then it's interesting because in all the newspapers, every time he talks, it's his.
Right.
What I've been told is that he uses a number of fronts. No, look, this is not a guy who did the murder and then became a good guy. That's not what happened.
Right.
This is a guy who did the murder and got away with it, and he acted exactly like someone who got away with murder.
Where the hell's the FBI? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, right. Exactly. Yeah. Where is the FBI?
Where's the Department of Justice? Yeah. Like where are they?
The gaming license. Why don't you? There's hundreds, thousands of real estate deals. Look, Chris Mackney worked for him for 5 years. The guy rejected all of his real estate deals, probably at least in part because some of them he couldn't do because he's a felon. So. Yeah, I found some stuff. There's a whole other book that could be written about this guy. I haven't been able to find nearly as much as I hoped on Pete Scamardo, but this is not a guy who felt like, whew, I got close. I got that murder. I'm going to turn into a good person. That's not what happened at all.
No.
So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that I lay out. And I believe I've only scratched the surface on the things he's done over the last 30-some years. And also, he's never apologized to the Jaley family. He's never even acknowledged that he did it. There's a story that Sam DeJalia's widow told me, Ginger. She walked out of court and she saw Pete and his sister. His sister was driving. They drive up. They stop. Pete laughs in her face, and then they drive away. And that's the Jekyll and Hyde. That's the Hyde.
Yeah.
That's when he showed his true colors. That's
I like
the kind of guy he is.
That one quote, I don't know where I read that, where he, Chris went up to him at some point and said, "You're bullying me."
You're a bully, and I love it.
You're damn right, and I love it, or something like that.
Right. Let me find it. That's in his suicide note. That's in his suicide note. He, he's picking up the children, and he walked up to Pete, and he hadn't known about the murder at that point. That's really what's interesting is he didn't at that point he didn't even know about the murder. But yeah, he said, "Pete, you're such a bully," and Pete goes, "That's right, and I love it." And yeah, that's what he is. Yeah. That's the kind of guy he is.
Total scumbag.
Because he's been getting away with it for so long that they've got this like God complex where they can get away with just about anything. That a lot of politicians have that. If you're getting away with it.
I did an interview with Paul Elam, who runs A Voice for Men, and he asked me. He said, did they really think they could copyright the suicide note and get away with it? And, Rich Ware was listening to it, and he sent me an email afterwards, and he said, Scamardo always overreached and he always got away with it. So that's probably why he did it, because he got away with everything else. So yeah, you know,
why not?
Getting away with everything else.
Copyright? Yeah. Did they actually physically get the copyright yet, or is it still pending?
You can find it online. Like, you know, Rochelle Hill. You know, I mean, you know, I don't know exactly what's going to happen in her career, but there's a letter with her name on top, and the reason
why I'm saying this is because, let's just say in your book, I'm not telling you what to write, but I mean, I'm just, you know, argument's sake, if you or somebody else was to put this entire suicide note in their book and make money off it, what I'm saying is the copyright, does she actually physically have a copyright on it?
No. She got a copyright from a judge in Virginia. I sent Rochelle Hill, Gina Mackney, Pete Scamardo an email, and I said, look, I'm putting the entire note in my book. If you guys have a problem with it, you need to reach out to me now. But look, Eugene Bullock, he put this to bed. If they try to challenge me, I'm just going to take all of the arguments he put in and push back with his arguments. No one at this point thinks she has a legitimate copyright notice. And look, it's on like 300 different websites. If she has a problem with me in the book, maybe she should talk to the 300 other websites that have already put it on there. And I'm not making money off the suicide note.
Yeah. Well, no, but I mean, because it's in your book, they would say, wait a minute, you're making money because it's in your book, and we've got the copyright.
Right.
Like, you can't even sing Happy Birthday on television or in the movies unless you pay some jackass somewhere. They've got the copyright.
Except it's a bogus. Listen, if they want to challenge me on that copyright, that's what I want, because then I can subpoena everything.
All the evidence.
Then Judge Ellman has to explain why he gave this copyright notice. You know, you have to explain why it was in Arlington County. Well, you know, we'll have a lot of fun then. If
but
they really
it was
they want to sue me on anything,
the web, right? Wasn't it originally on a web or Facebook or blog?
Right. So he put it on his blog, Good Men Did Nothing, which is something that you say.
Right.
And then the blog was removed, and the blog was right. So hold on. So and that's his. The blog was removed because Gina Mackney pressured the family. And they pressured the family while they were planning the funeral. Like, she was calling them as they're planning the funeral. And she's like, you better take this down or I'm going to sue you. So they're planning a funeral, and she's threatening a lawsuit. Yeah, no, this is the kind of people this is. Right. So then I had it went down on January 24th, because I remember that was the day I sent an email to Blog Press, who had it, or WordPress, and I said, why is a dead man's blog taken down? And, you know, and they explained it. They said, oh, no, the family wanted it taken down. I was like, I don't believe the family wanted it taken down. But I was one of the people who had saved the suicide note, the entire blog, and I passed it to a guy named Henry Makow, and then he, anonymously, and he's kept my anonymity. And he's a conspiracy theorist, but I want to say he was honest with me, and he kept my anonymity, and that's the most important thing for me, so I don't really care if he's a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
But he republished it, and that's when she went for the copyright notice. It was after it was published and republished, and then it went on a bunch of different other websites. But
then viral, right?
Right. She hasn't really, there's like 300 websites that it's on. So if she wants to sue me, I'd want to ask her, what about all these other websites? And then you're saying that I'm going to derive value from a suicide note that's on 300 websites?
Right.
Well, since we're on, go ahead.
That was the same thing that happened this past week. There was this judge by the name of Ferzini here in Connecticut who originally on the Eric Foy case said that they couldn't post a case detail or whatever motions and things of a family case on the web with the Connecticut Law Tribune. And it was already out on the web with 5 other websites, and then the judge was claiming that it was against the law to post this out on a website, and there was no gag order. It wasn't a hidden case or a totally worked up case that had to be gagged or hidden from public view. So it was like, these judges just make up whatever they want. I mean, the judge in wherever that assigned the copyright, he just did whatever he could, and he got paid probably $10,000 for it, and he just did it. He didn't care whether it was right or wrong, or he should have. That's the way these judges are.
Or this is a powerful family. There's a lot of different reasons. Look, I just found the part you were talking about where Chris talked about him being a bully. I remember on Memorial Day 2008 when I went to pick up my children for lunch at their grandparents' house. Pete Scamardo came outside to confront me. I looked at him and I said, "Pete, you're nothing but a bully." He responded, "That's right, and I love it." He said it in front of Dina, his wife, and my children. When I got in the car to take my children to lunch, my son asked, "Dad, what's a bully?"
Wow.
And there you go. That's right. I'm a bully and I love it.
Well, since we're on bullies and conspiracy theories, is it possible that the old man, Scamardo, to get this laptop, is it possible that there were threats outside of court, meaning his goons?
There's possible.
There's
anything. This is as Machiavellian a person as I've ever covered, near me where I've really gotten to investigate. Anything is possible with the guy, and you know what? If he hears me say he's Machiavellian, he's probably saying, I love it. He's a very Machiavellian person, so anything is possible. I think it was probably more legal threats and sort of like this again from Cheryl Atkinson's book, more the threats, the constant calling and the emailing and no, you need to release this, you need to release this, sort of that kind of threat. That's what she went through with her bosses, where people from the administration would just constantly call and email and just really beat people down. That was, I think, more the kind of threats. I don't know if he got his goons. But I don't think his style anymore is to get goons. I think his style is to get a bunch of three-piece suit lawyers and those kinds of gangsters. He doesn't use the kind of gangsters that you find on the streets anymore. These are more three-piece suit gangsters like Rochelle Hill and Jim Cassell.
So the brother, do you think he might be willing to tell really how he had to give that up? I mean, or is he keeping brother silent?
He look. I don't want to say too much about the brother because it was all off the record. And if I say any more, the brother doesn't want to get involved, which I think speaks for itself. I'm doing more to protect his brother's legacy than he is, but he doesn't want to get involved. He's got a family out in California. I got this from people very, very close to what happened. I emailed it to the D.C. Police Department, and they had no comments. I think if you get it wrong and you email something to the D.C. Police Department and you get it wrong, they'll correct the record. I think the fact that they have no comments says that I got it exactly right. The brother doesn't want to get involved, but he was out in California. I'm not sure exactly if he knew everything.
Right.
A lot of this stuff was happening outside of his control.
Were they close?
No.
Were they what?
Were they close? I mean, did they have a lot of contact back and forth?
They weren't. Yeah, he wasn't that close to his brother. They weren't estranged or anything like that. They tried that in court with him. Oh, you don't have a good relationship with your brother. They weren't that close, but they weren't. This wasn't like an estranged relationship. But his brother has a couple of small kids. He's got his own life. All I'll say is, you don't necessarily want to get yourself mixed up with Pete Scamardo, and so, he doesn't want to get himself mixed up with Pete Scamardo is the way I would say it. So, I don't really need his brother to know what happened. I got it from very good sources, exactly what was going on. The only thing I haven't figured out for sure is whether or not the Attorney General's office from D.C. was putting pressure on the police departments. But I lay it out in the book what happened, and that's what happened. She put pressure on these guys to grab a laptop that she had no business getting, so she could take control of all of these documents, and that was step one. And step two was getting the copyright notice so you can remove all the documents from the internet.
Well, I do look very forward to reading your book. When is it? Is there a due date? Is it? Are we looking close? Within a year? Within a month? When does it due out?
There's no due date yet because it's still being shopped around. I don't know how much longer I'm going to wait to have it shopped around. I may wind up publishing it myself. If I publish it myself in the next 2-3 months, if it finds a publisher whenever the publisher wants it. So as early as March, maybe as late as June.
Well, I can't see how a publisher would turn this down. I mean, this really, when I was reading the information that you gave me, I see this. I mean, at first I thought, well, this is a movie, and I thought, no. This is more than a movie. This needs to be. You could do not a mini series, but a maxi series. I mean, because it starts in 1967 is when this story starts, and it ends in 2000. Well, it hasn't ended yet. It's still ongoing, I would imagine, right?
Right. No. It ends really after the suicide. And I was. This is why I wanted to stay anonymous. I was behind the scenes. I was watching everything unfold. I could see like the suicide note being removed from website after website after website, and then suddenly April 23rd comes along, and I did a Google search, and I suddenly see Chris Mackney suicide is everywhere, and I'm like, something just happened. It's. I don't know if anything's happening now. It basically through the month of May of 2013 is really when the story sort of ended. But yeah, look, why don't publishers want it? Besides Alec Baldwin's book on his divorce, I don't know that any book on this kind of a book with the details of divorce has ever been published. And Alec Baldwin's book was published because he's Alec Baldwin. So he had the name recognition that you'd want to read the book. So my own personal opinion based on dealing with media types is people consider this he said, she said. They consider it a private matter. And the third thing that they'll never admit is this is ripe for a defamation libel suit. So I think I take this to publishers and they say it's not for them. And the reason they say it's not for them is, whoa, we're going to get sued.
Right.
And
you've also got CPS involved too, and everybody's afraid of the CPS. Police are afraid of them. Everybody's afraid of them. These people, where they got their power from, and they've got power in Canada and in Australia and all over Europe. For whatever reason, anything connected to a child has power. I mean, it is amazing.
They can walk in and take your kids. Now, I didn't. There's nothing CPS related in Mackney's story, so I generally kept CPS out. Though, as I said, I was actually driven to this story by joining another investigative piece on Child Protective Services, top to bottom corruption in Pennsylvania. But yeah, no, their power comes from the fact they can take away your kids. That's not. That's a very uncomfortable thing.
We got another caller on here. Stay here, Ted. Don't go anywhere. Again, I have no way of determining your name. I'm just going to read the last 4 digits of your phone number, and when I do, you're going to be on. 21903. You are now on with the captain. Do you have a question?
Hello, Captain. No, I basically, this is John Arndt.
John Arndt.
I've spoken with Mr. Volpe.
Hey,
already
John,
on
how's
the
it going?
phone. Good. And yourselves?
Doing well. Yeah, John has a somewhat similar story. He's certainly the child support part of it he can relate to very well. So I don't know if that's what you were going to talk about.
Absolutely. My comments are basically around what you've already iterated. And there's such a social stigma around divorce, around child support, around, we're taking care of the children. That's where the power comes from. The little laws and codes that have been devised for the best interest of the children are unstoppable because you look at any argument against it and it makes you look like you're not for children.
Right.
And there's such a background bit of most courts that they don't make headlines. And it's also profitable. Under Title 4D, as soon as they get involved, the more kids and parents they get wrapped up in the system, the more they can rape the taxpayer to support that very system. And
there's one other point that I can make. Once they get involved, less and less of the money you pay is going to your kids. More and more is going to them. So, that's the big irony. Oh, you're a deadbeat dad. Well, if you fall behind or they get involved and you send $100, like 20 of it is going to your kid. So here they are calling you a deadbeat dad, and then when you pay money, it's not going to your kid anyway.
Right, and it's getting racked up in a debt behind you that becomes, its own quagmire. Once they get started, it's basically in some weird way it's got to be voluntary servitude. Right. Somehow, somewhere, we sign something that says that they can abuse us, and there's a lot of theories. There's maritime law, laws of admiralty, laws of equity, the things that are mentioned in your Constitution. But it's tenacious, and they dig deeper and deeper, and even if you've got the answers and you go in front of a family court judge, unless you've got, like an Article 3 judge behind you, nobody cares. The transcripts won't relay anything that has to do with what's lawful or illegal. So they're permitted to lie, they're permitted to do and enforce how they wish. And a practical man looks at these things and says, how can this possibly work? How can this be possibly fair? What did I do in my whole life that means that somebody can take away my life because they want to? And that's
they've also got a lot of federal dollars. You've got state dollars and
no
adoption
oversight.
money. You've also got their
no
special needs
oversight
kids.
by anybody.
No. And they're making money from everywhere. They're making money from the taxpayers. They're making money from the parents. They have to pay alimony or child support. I mean, they're making money left and right in every direction. And the taxpayers still do not understand. They are paying the government to kidnap their own children.
That's correct.
Right. There's two points that should be made. One, can't file for bankruptcy to get rid of child support. That's the only thing you can't get rid of with bankruptcy. Look, a guy from Florida just sent me his child support notice, and they say he has $400 in assets, and they say he's $20,000 behind on his child support. Now, something's wrong there. Clearly, he doesn't have the money. How did you get to the $20,000? That's number one. Number two, child support's not the only thing in America that does this, but we got rid of debtor's prison unless, of course, you're like Carlos Rivera, you fall behind in the $13,000 a month child support, and then they'll throw you in jail.
It's
the only debt where you can go to jail. Support. Right, and that's right, and the judge says, well, it was your fault, I don't care. So you spent 4 months in jail, you're another 4 months behind in child support, pay up, or we'll throw you in jail. And that was one of the, I got a series of text messages that Chris Mackney sent to Jill Peterson Mitchell towards the end of his life, and that was one of the things he said, is child support's going to come after me. They'll garnish. And that was, he felt like the next step in the process was just the persistent child support harassment and put him in jail for child support. And, it's, you fall behind on your credit card bill, you can just ignore their creditor calls and they'll, your credit will be shot. But besides that, you don't get hurt at all. They can't call your job. If they call you too often, you can complain. But you fall behind on your child support and you'll just go into jail.
They commit violence against you for a debt. It's no different than a loan shark. It's usury. It's all kinds of things. It's barratry. It's champerty. It's extortion. Extortion. I actually hauled a cop into domestic relations and accused him of extortion. Asked the cop to arrest him, even though I knew it was fruitless. I got it on record and on film.
This is the one thing that the feminists have label people as deadbeat dads, and so they've done a really good job of making sure the media doesn't try to cover this part of the story too much.
That's exactly right. Well, right down to your
a guy like John Arendt, good luck getting someone to be sympathetic to you, because it doesn't matter what your child support is. It doesn't matter how tough things are for you. You're labeled a deadbeat dad, so nobody's going to be sympathetic to you. And that was the same thing with Chris Mackney. In fact, Brian Mitchell, in one of the, when he was pretending to be somebody else, we were sending him an email and calling him a deadbeat dad. But they label you a deadbeat dad, so they don't talk about the other side. One of the books I read in preparation for this was Bias by Bernie Goldberg, and he actually made that point. It was written in 1999, and he said, the feminists have told you this side of the coin, but what about the other side? And where is the media on that other side? And he actually, was a very prescient point that he made, that you're only getting the side that these scummy dads who don't want to support their kids, and you're not getting the side of the scummy mom who sets the dad up for failure by setting him up with child support, like $13,000 a month that they know they can't afford. Like a guy who has no job who has to pay $28.16 a month. They did that with Chris Mackney. They based it on his 2007 income. Well, number one, it was at the top of the real estate boom, and number two, it was almost entirely based on one deal. But in 2010, the judge kept his child support at a level based on his 2007 income, even though the market had totally tanked. The market in 2010 was completely different than the market in 2007, but it didn't matter, and that's that term imputed income.
Right.
Aren't they doing the same to you,
I can tell you the same.
There is a federal worksheet that's supposed to be followed in every state. The United States government created that federal worksheet. I know of no court, family court or criminal court or any court that actually follows the federal guidelines. And you know what? No, everybody that reports the fact that the states are not following the federal guidelines, you know what the federal government does about that? Absolutely nothing.
Right, but again, this is if it's imputed income, and I used to be a mortgage broker, so I was in mortgages through the boom and right after the boom. In mortgages, we had a loan called the no income verification loan. So here's how the loan works: you're a teacher and you really make $60,000 a year, but the house you want to buy is $80,000. You need to make $80,000 a year, but that's the house you really want. So even though you make $60,000, you want to buy the house, so you need to make $80,000. So you do a no income verification loan. So you're a teacher, you tell them you make $80,000, but you're not verifying the income, so you don't send in any of your documents. Now, it'll surprise no one that this loan was one of the main reasons why we're at where we're at. Well, that's imputed income with child support. They're basing your child support based on a phantom income, not an income you actually make, but an income a judge has decided you should be making.
Right.
And then they throw you in jail and then they throw you in jail when you can't make the payment on that phantom income, like Carlos Rivera again. Based on that $13,000 a month wasn't based on an income he was making. It was based on an income a judge decided he should make, just like no income verification loans.
Right.
It's a phantom income. It's not real.
And when you file the motions to actually go back into court to readjust for the lack of income or the lack of something, they either throw the motion out, deny the motion, or just walk you out the door and say you're in violation, you're in contempt, go to jail. That's exactly what the courts do.
That's exactly
right.
Aren't you going through that same kind of similar thing, Ted? I mean, are they trying to milk you for?
They haven't come after me yet, and the funny thing is now that I'm actually jobless, careerless, penniless, homeless, almost familyless, right? Because I have almost absolutely nothing. So it's going to be funny when I walk through the court to actually get divorced, which they've not allowed me to do in the last 2.5 years. But when they try to impugn income on me, I have no career. I have no life. My life and my career are completely over. I will have to reinvent something. I'll probably start at McDonald's or Home Depot or whatever. But, at $10 an hour, even if they wanted to impugn me. So basically all I'm going to say is, look, I'm going to stay in the house. I will be a stay-at-home dad. The children don't have to go to daycare, a warehouse daycare anymore, and I will sit here and take care of the kids. That's going to be our recommendation to basically go into family court with. Now, whether or not they kill me because the decision, to everybody's point, the decision's already been made. So it'll be an interesting, complexity because I'm going to fill out that federal affidavit. I have no income. I'm actually in $200,000 worth of debt. So I don't know how they're going to actually find any income when I can't do anything. Like I have no career option. I used to work on Wall Street.
Yeah, they'll say you owe back child support, and if you don't pay it immediately, you got to go back to jail. That's what they'll probably end up doing to you.
Right. Look, there's a story going around the internet about a guy from Detroit who they want to put him in jail for child support for a child they admit isn't his.
Isn't his? I saw it today on
Facebook. Me too.
Right, yeah. So look, this is the kind of thing they did. And keep in mind, with Chris Mackney, this I believe was part of the strategy. The less you see your kids, the more your child support is. So he can't, he wasn't in a position to say, look, I have no income, so why don't I be the stay-at-home dad? Because he wasn't allowed to see his kids. And this is the woman whose father is a murderer is telling the court that she's afraid of her ex-husband and he shouldn't see the kids. So just the irony of all of that is it's so thick. Your father's a murderer, but Chris Mackney's the one who shouldn't see the kids. But so in his case, he didn't have that option because he couldn't even see the kids. So that child support. It's a whole. It's yet one piece of a giant puzzle of problems. And once they set it at a certain income, good luck with that. Good luck removing it. You get fired, you get downsized, you can't start a new career. Starting a new career, you know, if it's set at 80,000 and you get tired of your career and you want to start afresh and try for 50,000, they won't reduce it.
No, you're
well, yeah, you better stay at that dead end job because I say so.
Yeah. And the one key thing too about CPS, going back to that story, is today I heard through the rumor and the grapevine, my ear to the ground kind of thing, in Connecticut now, because we have a huge budget crisis because gas prices have fallen so far below average that our gas tax that we extort off the citizens that drive in the state is so low. What's happening now is CPS has actually made an internal memo to employees only that the Child Protective Services will now have to steal 60% more children than last year in order to get the federal grant money to flow into the company so that they can keep all their employees that no longer need a job because we really don't have the business. So instead of actually downsizing the federal and the federal money coming off the federal taxes and downsizing our state government to be more efficient, we're actually going to fake the system and actually just falsify all these documents and steal more children because we need that federal money.
That is amazing. Well, guys, I'm running out of time here.
Thing.
I wish we could talk for another 2 hours because I could. But I really want to thank Michael Volpe. I got your name right this time. His book, Bullied to Death, the Chris Mackney story. I'm looking very forward to reading that whenever that comes out. I want to thank Ted Topier for calling in and John Arndt. I want to thank you for calling in. I know there's a lot of